Again, my name is Michael Gear. I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Family Institute, one of the hosting organizations for the Pennsylvania March for Life, along with the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference and the March for Life organization in Washington, D.C. And we are grateful to them for arranging this webcast today, for the work that they have put into it. And what I think that I'll do is lay out a few specifics of what you're going to be seeing today, and then we'll open in prayer and get underway with our program as people are logging in. So today we have a wonderful lineup of speakers. We are very gratified to have Abby Johnson joining us, also Ryan Bomberger from the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Monique Ruberu from Philadelphia area, pro-life OBGYN and a leader of wonderful pro-life activity there in the Philadelphia region. My partner and colleague at the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, Eric Failing, and a vice president for the March for Life, coming to us from Washington, D.C., is Tom McCleskey as well. And you'll be hearing from each of them, presentations from each, and then looking at the pro-life issues in Pennsylvania and nationally, and how you can engage and be involved in it as well. So as we get underway, let me open us in prayer. If you'll bow in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to gather virtually, which has become sort of the norm for us in these days through church services and webcasts and schooling and so many different ways we've learned to relate in this different way. We know that your hand is always upon us, that we can trust in you through these difficult times, and we do here this morning or this afternoon put our trust in you as we look to you to advance the cause of life here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and nationally. First off, we lift up our leaders in Washington, D.C., President Trump, and all those who are making decisions related to our lives, and especially on the issue of life. We pray, Lord, for leadership to continue in advancing the sanctity of life from conception until natural death, and that you would give protection and wisdom to all those that stand for life, and to guide those who oppose the sanctity of life, that you would move them towards respect life at all stages. We also pray for our governor, Tom Wolf, here in Pennsylvania, and the legislature, and those who stand for life. We pray, Lord, that you would advance their efforts, and for our governor who has taken stances in opposition to the sanctity of life, Father, that you would change his heart as well. Father, your word tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you knew us before we were formed in the womb. You tell us to rescue those who are being led into slaughter, and to be a voice for the voiceless, and to speak up for the little ones. So we pray, Lord, for this webcast today, for all those that are participating with us as viewers and listeners, as well as those who are on the panel, that you would guide our words, that you would let seeds be planted here today that would result in much fruit for your kingdom, and especially as well for the sanctity of life to be advanced in Pennsylvania, in America, and across the world. That is our prayer, and we ask it in the precious name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Well, thank you again for joining us here at the Login for Life event, which is brought to you by the March for Life organization, the Pennsylvania March for Life, Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, and the Pennsylvania Family Institute. And it is my pleasure to welcome a great lineup of speakers. And the very first one that will be joining us is Abby Johnson. We are so excited. I saw Abby in Philadelphia last year at a wonderful gathering of pro-lifers outside the Planned Parenthood clinic, and it's also where I met one of our other speakers, Dr. Ruberu, as well, was there. Abby Johnson has always been fiercely determined to help women in need, and it was that desire that led her to a career with Planned Parenthood, where she served, ultimately becoming a clinic director, served there for 8 years. But while there, she encountered things that really troubled her. And it was really it changed significantly on September 26, 2009, when she was asked to assist with an ultrasound-guided abortion. And she watched in horror as a 13-week baby in the womb fought for and ultimately lost its life at the hands of an abortionist. At that moment, she fully realized what abortion actually was and what she had dedicated her life to. Abby sought help from a local pro-life group, and she swore that she would begin to advocate for life in the womb and would expose abortion for what it is. And Abby's amazing story of redemption is told in her book, Unplanned, and recounted in the movie of the same name, Unplanned, which was released in theaters last year and is available online and by streaming as well now. I recommend it. She's the founder of Then There Were None, a ministry that assists abortion clinic workers out of the to transition out of that industry. And to date, more than 430 have done just that through Abby's leadership and much prayer. So she lives in Texas with her husband and 7 beautiful, precious children. I now welcome to this Login for Life, Pennsylvania March for Life webcast, Abby Johnson. Welcome, Abby.
Oh wait, I'm still figuring out all this technology, guys. Okay, I am so glad to be with all of you. I've got to update this bio. I keep having kids so fast, I can't keep my bio updated. So I've got 8 kids now, and let's see, and we've helped 570 workers leave the abortion industry. So it's just been good things on all fronts, just many, many blessings. And I'm realizing how you guys have these beautiful backgrounds, and I have like the dumbest background because it's actually like my real background. Like I have a head by a head, which is the worst background of anybody's background. And you can even see my trash can right here. I have like the worst background. So I've got to work on my background. That's my next thing. So that's my next to-do item on my quarantine list. So anyway, it is so good to be here with all of you. Man, these are crazy times that we are in, all of us together. And I've got to tell you, it's sort of crazy to say, crazy to think about. I have been in one side or the other, the abortion movement, for now over 20 years. And I keep thinking about this, and I have never seen the abortion industry so frenzied as I am seeing them right now. And, you know, in this 20 years time, I've never seen them in such an absolute frenzy. They are going crazy. And I've been really thinking about, you know, why that is. And, you know, during this time of, you know, pandemic, I think it's because they are really seeing for the first time that access to abortion is truly fragile. I think it's more fragile than they even realized. You know, in some states, when this pandemic really arose, there were some states, like the great state of Texas, where I live, that deemed abortion a non-essential service, which of course we know it is non-essential. And said that, you know, abortions could not take place. And, you know, the abortion industry, of course, you know, rose up in arms, and they took, you know, the state to court, and they lost battle after battle in court. And I think that was really frightening to them, to see that even in a court challenge, that abortion was seen as non-essential, as a non-essential service. Even in a circuit court challenge, that this was seen as non-essential. And even when they took it to the Supreme Court, now the Supreme Court didn't hear this, but they had asked Justice Alito, like, please, please take this up with the Supreme Court. And it didn't go anywhere with Justice Alito. Their friend in the Supreme Court didn't even, look at it for them. I think they're realizing now for the first time that maybe abortion isn't as set in stone as they thought it was. And that is making them terrified. I think that they're seeing for the first time that public opinion isn't as set in stone as they thought it was. And that's making them very scared. And that's a good thing. That's a very encouraging thing for us as pro-lifers. We are seeing that finally they're having to admit, even their own people in their own movement, professors and people in there that are champions for their cause. They're saying, guys, we don't really have science on our side anymore. We can't say that the unborn aren't human beings. We have to concede that point. We have to say that, yes, science does tell us that the unborn are human beings. We can't argue that point anymore. Even their own people are admitting that. They're saying, we have to say that it is a human being. But now we just have to say that it is a human being, but we're saying that it's okay to kill it. And that's something that has to really ring in their ears, right? That they're admitting now that, yes, it is a human being. Yes, scientifically, the pro-life movement has been right. But now they're admitting that it is my property. And now, since it's my property, I'm allowed to do what I want to with it. And we have heard this argument before. History has heard that argument before. That since this human being is my property, I'm allowed to do with this property as I wish. We've heard that argument before. And are they really a group of people that wants to stand on that side of history? They are standing on a losing side of history. They are standing on a losing battleground. And only in time will they realize that this is a fight that they don't want to fight. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. Eventually, you realize this is not a battle that I want to lose. When the chips fall, I don't want to be standing on this side of history. When the chips fall, I want to be standing on the side of life, not the side of death. And that's why I believe we are seeing so many conversions on the life issue. That's why I believe we have seen 570 abortion clinic workers turn away from their jobs and join us in the pro-life movement, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. They're seeing now, for maybe the first time ever, that what they have believed in for all of these years, number one, it's a lie. Number two, it's the wrong side of history. And number three, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense scientifically. It doesn't make sense logically. It doesn't line up with any faith perspective. It doesn't make sense morally. it doesn't line up with medical advancements. It just doesn't make sense. And so how can you keep justifying something that just doesn't make sense? You can't. And I think that's why the abortion industry right now is just in such a complete meltdown. And let me be clear with you guys. It will get worse before we win. It will get worse before we start seeing more and more victories. It will get more vile. Their supporters, they will be more harsh. They will be nastier to you. They may be more violent with you. They are going to say the nastiest, most vile things to you on the internet. You're not going to even, they have said stuff to me lately. I didn't even know you could string sets of cuss words together that they have. Okay. They have come up with new cuss words that I've never even heard before. Okay. To say to me on the internet. It's been truly amazing. Let me tell you something. That's okay. Because the Bible tells us it's better to be hot or cold than lukewarm. What I'm here to tell you is this. The people who are more vile to you, they are the ones that have a better chance of being converted on this issue than those who are apathetic. The clinic workers who have come through and then there were none, they are not the ones who plugged their ears and walked into the clinics and pretended like they didn't hear the people on the sidewalk. The workers who have had conversions, who have come through and then there were none, they were the ones that flipped off the protesters. They were the ones that cussed them out every day. They were the ones that pretended like they were going to run them over with their cars. They were like the worst of the worst, okay? And it's the same. The people who have come to me who have said, oh my gosh, I was like the worst on your Facebook page. I said terrible things to you and now I'm pro-life. They're not the ones that are apathetic, that are having conversions on this issue. The reason that they're being terrible to you on the internet, the reason that they're being terrible to you to your face is because they are convicted on this issue. Their conscience is being pricked on this issue. That's why they're having these outbursts toward you. So our response to them, and this is hard, y'all, and I'm going to admit to you that I have a problem with this too, because I have a very sharp tongue, but our response to them has to be love and mercy. And it's hard. It's hard for me too. But we have to keep at the forefront of our mind, like, I mean, I use sarcasm too, but like, we have to be genuinely loving with them, even if we throw in a little bit of sarcasm. But we have to be loving to them because we don't know what's behind that sarcasm. I mean, what's behind that outburst to us. We don't know what's behind that. There could be a series of abortions behind that outburst of hate. There could be all kinds of stuff. There could be abuse. There could be all kinds of trauma. And so, you know, we just have to be sincere when we're dealing with them. And sometimes the best thing you can do is hit the mute button and just pray for them and go on about your day. And so right now, especially because we're not having a lot of face-to-face communication with people, sometimes right now, while everybody is on the internet, everybody's on social media, the best advice I can give you right now during this pandemic is pray a lot before you go on social media. It's not always about being right, okay? It's about planting seeds, and sometimes it's about planting seeds, hitting the mute button, and walking away. Be kind, be loving, walk away. Everybody keep doing what you're doing. Keep giving out the pro-life message. Don't be afraid. Be bold with your message. And thank you so much for having me on.
Well, Abby, thank you for those wonderful words and your encouragement for those who are doing the sidewalk counseling, especially in the places all across our Commonwealth, and knowing that they're on the front lines and making a really real difference in the lives of the people. And we're going to have opportunity a little bit later in the webcast for Q&A with you, Abby. So we look forward to that as well, to get your take on a number of things even happening here in Pennsylvania. And again, for those who are viewing, if you have questions that you want to pose to Abby or our other guests, you can go to the Q&A box down at the bottom of your page to ask those questions. It's now my pleasure to introduce a friend and a native son of Pennsylvania. Ryan Bomberger is a dynamic public speaker, as you'll find, a cutting-edge communicator and a passionate promoter of the sanctity of life. What's more, he's a Pennsylvanian, having grown up in a large family in Lancaster County, and his life is an amazing story of rescue and redemption, and of actively paying it forward. As Chief Creative Officer of the Radiance Foundation, Ryan works to impact millions to embrace their intrinsic value and the incredible possibility with which we are all created. Ryan is happily married to the love of his life, Bethany. They are the proud homeschooling parents of 4 amazing children, 2 of whom were adopted, and maybe we'll find out he has more since this was written. They are his daily inspiration in illuminating that every human life has purpose. So welcome, Ryan Bomberger.
Hey, it's great to be here. It is awesome to be with a fellow pro-lifers to share the same passion. And it's really cool because Abby is going to catch up with my original family in numbers. As mentioned, I'm from Pennsylvania. I was born and raised here in Pennsylvania. I grew up on a small little farm in Lancaster County. And I had a small family of 15, 6 brothers, 6 sisters. 10 of us were adopted by those pro-lifers who, and I love this mantra, who don't care about people after they're born. We are the ones who care about people after they're born. We care about them while they're in the womb. We care about them while they're, being protected in that womb. We care about them afterward. But I thank God that my parents, Henry and Andrea Bomberger, loved not only their biological children, they had 3 homemade ones, and then they adopted 10. I was the first one adopted in this small family of 15. And it's really remarkable because you look at our family and people wouldn't see us and think, oh, that looks like a family because we're white, black, white and black, Native American, Vietnamese, just a mixture of God's creation. Yet we are definitely one family, and it was such a blessing to grow up in that. And one of the most powerful things I learned growing up in a family like that, with parents who loved us unconditionally, didn't care about our backgrounds as far as the background or our past defining us. They cared about who we were meant to be. They cared about the God-given purpose we all had. But when you grow up in such a multiracial sort of family, and a really diverse family, you learn a really powerful truth, and that is we are all one human race. And it blows my mind as someone, my wife and I, we run the Radiance Foundation, and one of our first public ad campaigns was dealing with the hugely disproportionate impact of abortion in the Black community, where abortion rates up to 5 times higher. Of course, abortion, no matter the hue of skin, is a tragedy. But yet we live in a day and age where the pro-life movement, we're the ones who are called the racists somehow because we want to save every human life, white, black, and every hue in between. Yet the industry that was birthed in eugenic racism, we're told that they're not the racists. In fact, that was the op-ed from the new president of Planned Parenthood, Alexis McGill Johnson, who one of her first acts as the interim president was to write an op-ed saying, wait, we're not the racists, the pro-lifers are. But see, in this world of things that are upside down, if we don't filter everything through a lens of truth, we're going to be so easily deceived. And it's why my wife, Bethany, and I do what we do through the Radiance Foundation, because we love people enough to let them know the truth. We're motivated by 1 Corinthians 13:6, which says, love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. Our motivation is love. I mean, Abby was referring to that too. We are motivated by love. Love transforms people, and it allows us to move forward. And I love the work that we're able to do through the Radiance Foundation. You can visit us at radiance.life. But here we are in this coronavirus craziness, this pandemic, and we have to remember that panic is always dependence on the wrong source. Whoever would have thought that we would see churches shut down and businesses shut down, but abortion mills, no, they're going to stay open. In a time when we are trying everything, we are going to extraordinary lengths to save lives. Somehow in Pennsylvania and in many states across the country, the places that violently destroy human life are labeled life-sustaining and labeled essential. It's amazing what we do with language. It's amazing what pro-choice, pro-abortion activists do with language. And they understand this. They understand you have to distort and pervert language in order to advance an agenda that's predicated on a lie. That's what they do all the time. I mean, prior to this, we were told that abortion is a choice. It's a personal choice between a woman and her doctor, a woman and her God, little g God, and her doctor, right? Well, then if it's a choice, then it's an elective thing. It's not an essential thing. And that's why when I hear Governor Tom Wolf talk about how abortion is life-sustaining, really? Abortion, an act that deliberately kills an innocent human life, and even sometimes, not just the unborn child, but sometimes the mother, always harms the mother in some sort of way, harms the father as well. But abortion that takes the life of an innocent child is considered life-sustaining? For me, that would be the same thing slavery. Okay, slavery was job-sustaining. That's the ridiculousness of all this rhetoric that we're being fed. But see, this is what they have to do. They have to constantly change language. They have to constantly, throw in new buzzwords and play with semantics in order to avoid the truth. And this is why we're here. I mean, I have to show you a photo. Hopefully this will work. Hopefully I can share this photo, because when I talk about life and being adopted and having purpose unleashed, it was because it was a deliberate act by my birth mom, who chose, despite going through 9 months of a traumatic pregnancy, she chose courageously not only to give me life, but give me the gift of adoption. I had two parents who didn't know what in the world they were getting into. No parent does, by the way. Even if it's a biological child, you don't know what you're getting into, but they deliberately chose to love us. They deliberately chose to love me. I was the first one adopted, and it went really well, apparently. So there was like one flavor added, new flavor added every year. I want to show you this. Hopefully this will work. This is, whenever you hear about unwanted, I want you to replace whatever image you may have in your mind with this. This is just my family, my brothers, my sisters, their spouses, and their children. There's no extended family in here except for a little grandma in the middle of the picture. But this is what unwanted looks like. So this is everybody. Actually, this is everybody as of 3 years ago. It's amazing what changes. There have been more added through marriage, more added through adoption. I think there are 14 people missing from this picture. But this is what it looks like when you defy the world's low expectations. This is what it looks like. Two parents who hear the world and hear the lie that somehow if you're unplanned, you're going to be unwanted, you're going to be unloved. Well, they shattered that myth. They shattered that lie. And because of courageous birth moms, this picture is possible. And so that's why when I talk about the issue of abortion, it is so personal to me. It's so deeply personal to me. And as mentioned earlier, I have 4 kiddos, 3 of whom were unplanned, 3 of whom were adopted. I mean, unplanned means nothing to me. And in my estimation, some of the best things in life are unplanned. God enables triumph to rise from tragedy all the time. I know it in my personal life, my wife knows it, and millions of you out there know it too. We see that transformation all the time. In my particular story, I'm that fringe example that even pro-lifers sometimes have a hard time embracing. I'm that 1% that is used 100% of the time to justify abortion. So my birth mom experienced the horror and the violence of rape. When you get in those conversations, it inevitably gets to that question, well, what about rape? Well, what about rape? What is the solution? What is the remedy? Not more violence. I'm so grateful to my birth mom for not only giving me life and giving me the gift of adoption, but showing that women can be stronger than their circumstances. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the courage of my birth mom. I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't spoken some kind of hope to her. And this is a power that we all possess. We can engage in conversations. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be a long conversation. Sometimes it can just be, I'm here for you. which would be enough for someone to feel like they don't have to go through the unplanned. They don't have to go through that crisis all on their own. So here I am, I conceived and raped, yet the circumstances of my conception don't change the condition of my work. As far as I know, none of the panelists here or anybody who's watching, none of you control the circumstances of your conception, right? Am I right? I can't see anybody, so it's kind of weird talking to a non-response audience, but none of us do. That would be extremely bizarre if you could. But the fact of the matter is we all have equal and irrevocable worth simply because we exist. And that's why the Radiance Foundation loves to create content to help equip you to engage in these conversations. One of my books, I wrote Not Equal, Civil Rights Gone Wrong. I take on the civil rights, whether it's become the civil rights industry. We were actually sued by the NAACP for calling them out, for calling out their radical pro-abortion position. In fact, I wrote an article about them called the National Association for the Abortion of Colored People. And they sued me, and they sued the Radiance Foundation. But thanks to Alliance Defending Freedom, 2 years later, we prevailed in court. There are going to be times when people are going to try to shut you down. You're going to be hated, but none of that matters, because what matters is you love people enough to speak the truth. You love people enough to show them the truth, and you love people enough to preserve their life, especially at their most vulnerable point. You know, we wouldn't have to do so much work with adults in trying to reshape their thinking if they understood as children what a pro-life worldview is. And you can see behind me the poster. I'm just going to brag on my wife for just a second. My wife, Bethany Bomberger, my favorite woman on the planet, wrote this adorable children's book called Pro-Life Kids, because kids are naturally pro-life. We need to reinforce what's already naturally there. We wouldn't have to do so much work, you know, in adults if children have that natural inclination reinforced. So we try to create content to help people understand what it means to be pro-life, understand that adoption is a beautiful option. It's not an easy option. It's hard for the birth mom. It's hard for the birth dad. It's hard for the adoptee. Sometimes it's hard for the adoptive families, but it is a beautiful, loving act filled with mercy and hope. And so I love that we can unleash unconditional love by acting. I just want to show you one last picture. Hopefully this will work as well, because sometimes the Zoom thing. I just need to show you a picture of my family. This is my wife and my 4 kiddos. And I just need to tell you that this picture would not happen if you didn't do what you do. If the pregnancy centers didn't do what they do, if the maternity homes didn't do what they do, if the adoption agencies didn't do what they do, if we didn't show unconditional love to people and walk with them on their journey, I wouldn't exist. My family wouldn't exist. What you do to fight for life in Pennsylvania and what you do across the nation makes lives like mine and my family possible. I mean, this is tangible. This is reality because of you. And it's okay if you're outnumbered. Sometimes you feel like, you know, it's just me. Well, it's okay. Courage doesn't need a crowd. It just needs conviction. So go out there and be courageous. God bless.
Well, thank you, Ryan, very much for that moving testimony and encouragement to all of us involved in the pro-life movement, the many people who have logged in here and have dedicated, many of them, many years. And it serves as a wonderful lead into our next guest, Dr. Monique Ruberu from the Philadelphia area. She's a daughter of the king, wife to an amazing husband, and a mother of 5 children, 2 in heaven. She's a convicted Catholic and a NAPRO technology-trained pro-life OBGYN. She co-leads 2 40 Days for Life campaigns in downtown Philadelphia. She's a pro-life advocate, trained sidewalk counselor, and public speaker, and very much an encouragement to those of us here in Pennsylvania in the pro-life movement. Doctor, welcome to our webinar.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with all of you guys. And geez, following Abby and Ryan, I'm just so honored to have been asked to speak today with all of you. I just wanted to share a couple of quick things. During this time of the pandemic, many of us, you know, this all began right in the middle of our last 40 Days for Life vigil, and it really caused a lot of issues. You know, we were having people who were filling in every single day. We had every single hour covered, and then all of this came about, and there was so much fear, so much anxiety, and you know, so many people had to kind of step back. We came back though through this by continuing prayer. During that time, although we had kind of pulled back our presence outside of the abortion center initially, we initiated an amazing prayer outreach where every single hour from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. was covered by at least 3 or 4 people praying specifically for every single woman who went in and out of that center, every worker, every person who was standing outside of the center and offering resources and prayer and peace and love and compassion. And what we found was that although our numbers of prayer workers outside of the abortion center, our sidewalk counselors, although those numbers depleted, we were still having saves because the 1 or 2 people who were consistently there were so supported with prayer that they became uber effective. And they had just so much strength and so much peace, and their ability to reach people, the ability of the Holy Spirit to work through them and to convert hearts and minds was just like ridiculous. It was amazing. So we still had at least 7 babies that we confirmed were saved during our last 40 Days for Life vigil. But in Philadelphia, we're not happy with just doing a 40 Days for Life vigil and then leaving it at that. So we continued on with our Sidewalk Servants campaign, and we still have people who have signed up to be present every day outside of the abortion center. And of course, we do it safely. People are wearing masks and spacing themselves out, but we're present. And we're peaceful and we're loving and we're offering information about abortion pill reversal. And every time that we go down, somebody has an amazing encounter. You know, it's just so beautiful. So the first and most important thing I want to share with all of you guys, continue to pray. Your prayers are so effective and so needed at this time. You're going to be praying for obviously the mothers, the babies, the workers, everybody who's involved with abortion. We need prayers for their conversion, but also pray for all of the people who are taking the effort, who are stepping out and standing outside of those abortion centers. Pray for them so that they are protected, so that they are strong, so that when those moments come up, when they're about to leave their house and they're finding some sort of, reason not to go or hesitating, pray for them so that they have the courage to just stick with the plan and keep going and make it out there and fill those hours. We know from Abby, from so many other people, when people are outside of those abortion centers and when we're kind, we're loving and compassionate, we know that it impacts the people who are walking in and out. We know that the workers see us and that if we're kind to them, that eventually they may have a change of heart. We know that our presence is more than just standing on a sidewalk. It's us participating in the spiritual battle that abortion is, and that we are being the hands and feet of Jesus at that moment and every moment that we're present out there. So continue to pray. You can pray from home. You can pray outside of the abortion center. You can pray wherever you are. But that is the key, the most important thing that we can do. And please consider continuing to show up. Just committing to 2 hours once a week, or 2 hours every other week, or 2 hours once a month. When everybody does that, and doing it safely, when everybody does that, we will have every hour covered without a doubt at every single abortion center in all of Pennsylvania. And we know that when people show up, lives are saved and lives are changed. So please consider signing up and going. And the second thing is donate. You want to donate your time with the prayer. You want to donate your time and your presence, but you also want to donate your treasure. All of these crisis pregnancy centers, which are available for these women, need our support. They're all running like a plane with one engine, and they never know whether they're going to have money to keep their doors open and continue to provide the service. It's up to us as pro-lifers to continue to support these places, to send them the gifts on the registries for their women, to send them all of the support that they need to keep their doors open and their lights on. We've got to do that. Then the next thing is figure out what is your place in the pro-life movement. You have to make sure that you are figuring out what your niche is. Maybe you're someone that is really amazing at writing cards, but you're not so amazing at speaking to people because you get really angry and you feel like punching someone's lights out. Do not show up outside of the abortion centers if that is you. You have to show up with love, or don't show up at all, please. But you might be someone who could write an amazing, beautiful letter after an hour of prayer, and I can hand those cards out to these women and you might change their mind in that way. Perfect. Figure out what your strengths are and how God created you perfectly to provide for this outreach and to change our culture and everything else. There are so many ways that you can help out. You can feed the homeless. You can wear pro-life clothes like this 1972 pin from Culture of Life 1972. You know, you can begin conversations with people in your grocery lines and everywhere else. You can wear Ryan Bomberger's t-shirts. Those are always amazing. You know, there's so many things that you could do. See, life has purpose. So you can always do things that are pro-life to enhance the pro-life community, to expand the culture, to expand the conversation, but always do it with love, with kindness, with compassion. And if you find that you are just being pushed to the end of your tethers, Abby's right, step back. It's better to just bite your tongue and not say something that is going to ruin the ability to have a conversation with that person, because we're never going to change hearts and minds in anyone unless we can actually have a conversation. So we want to welcome conversations with people who have completely different beliefs and mentalities. And if we maintain our composure and if we maintain our love and compassion, then we'll be able to accomplish all of it through the grace of God. So thank you all so much for being here. It makes me so excited to be a part of this and to encounter all of you. We're doing amazing things in Philly. You know, we have in Philadelphia itself, we have 2 pro-life OBGYNs who are both offering NAPRO services, the Gianna Center and my office, Natural Women's Health. We're doing abortion pill reversal. We can walk with them, and we are linking them up with all sorts of services. So you guys should be so proud of yourselves for everything that you have done and everything you continue to do. And my prayers are with all of you. God bless each and every one of you.
Well, Doctor, thank you very much for your compelling presentation. I heard you speak at a banquet earlier this year, and people crowded around you afterwards looking to volunteer. And I know that you've just done a wonderful job there in Philadelphia in drawing people to pray and to be engaged in front of the abortion centers there in Philadelphia. And even the story of your arrival, the timeliness of your arrival as a doctor there in Philadelphia is an amazing story that people need to hear as well. I want to take just a moment to mention something else that's a deadline today. Today is the deadline to register to vote in Pennsylvania, to vote in the June 2nd primary. The primary election was moved to June 2nd. And if you're not registered to vote, today is the last day to register to vote in that primary. And you can register to vote at votespa.com, votespa.com. So don't leave that tool on the sidelines. Get involved. If you care about the sanctity of life, voting is vitally important. And at votespa.com, you can register to vote. And with that, I want to introduce our next panelists. Actually, I'm going to introduce 2 at a time here because their topics are going to kind of merge together in many respects. First, we're going to be hearing from Tom McCluskey, who's Vice President at the March for Life organization. He's seated there, it looks like, in front of the United States Capitol. I don't know if that's actually where he is. We've been faking everybody out with our backgrounds here these days. But Tom McCluskey is a great ally, previously worked for the Family Research Council and now with the March for Life organization. And then you'll be hearing from my colleague, Eric Failing, with a look at policy issues here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Eric is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. So let me toss it now to my good friend, Tom McCluskey.
Thanks, Michael. And if you could see, that's actually me at 10 years old in Washington, D.C., visiting with my family. First off, I've got to say to Michael and Eric, in the future, when we have Abby and Ryan and Dr. Monique on, please don't have me go right after them. I feel like that Sesame Street song, one of these things is not like the other. Just fantastic speakers, except they really do speak. The work that the three of them do are the frontline work to me in the pro-life movement, everything that they do. What I'm about to talk to is more, I usually call it the trying to stop the floodgates type of thing so that they can do the work that they do, and it's more on the federal level. Since 1973, over 1 million people have marched in the March for Life. Around the world, that number is probably more like 10 million or so, tens of millions most likely, that have been inspired by the March for Life to take up action against the scourge of abortion. And what we at the March for Life understand is that marching is a great first step. For some, it's their first step into the pro-life movement, but we want to make sure it's not their last step. And one thing that I do at the March for Life is to help with the advocacy, the legislative advocacy, in working up on Capitol Hill and kind of humanizing the process too. And both Abby and Dr. Monique touched on the approach that we try to take. You approach with love. And that's even harder when you're talking about politicians. However, these are people that even when they're not with you, they can be. And if they can't be, then you can be in a position to, as Michael pointed out, maybe replace them with somebody who can. Except if you're not being involved, you can't do any of that. And first off, I would also let everybody else has Pennsylvania connections. I myself am from upstate New York. However, my wife and I do have a beautiful boxer dog named after one of Pennsylvania's favorite daughters, St. Catherine Drexel, who helped found the church that we were married in. And the Drexel family, of course, is very well known up in the Pennsylvania area. Now, some of the issues right now that we're dealing with up on Capitol Hill, you would think that with all these governments forcing businesses to close and all, the government would get off their backs. They have not. Some, including in the House of Representatives, I see this as a tremendous opportunity. And those are the exact words, actually, that the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden, said on Friday, except it echoes what the majority whip in the House, Jim Clyburn, said before, that they see this as a tremendous opportunity. And to them, this tremendous opportunity means expanding abortion and expanding taxpayers' role in it. So one thing we're trying to do and work on the federal level and try to assist on the national level is, of course, to funding Planned Parenthood, making sure that any of this relief money doesn't go to them, protecting taxpayers, because right now a lot of people are losing their jobs, and they're going to lose their health insurance with it, and there's going to be government subsidies coming in. Those government subsidies should not be paying for abortion. At a time when tens of thousands of people are dying from the COVID-19, we shouldn't add to those numbers by subsidizing the abortion industry, who kills hundreds of thousands, if not more. Also, one thing that the other side is trying to do is the funding of fetal tissue experiments. And they're trying to say that through vaccines or something like that. There are pro-life alternatives. And not to get too Catholic again, today would have been the 100th birthday of Pope John Paul II, who was a wonderful advocate for life and brought the life issue to the front door of a lot of people and leaders of nations. And he said, respect for life requires that science and technology should always be at the service of man and its integral development. And that is the approach, be you religious or not, that is the approach we should all take, that science should not rule man, man should rule science. And human people are not there for experimentations, be they unborn or beyond. So what do you do during this time of crisis, though, during this time of COVID-19? You can't exactly go knocking on the doors in Harrisburg or in Washington, D.C. On our website, you'll find it marchforlife.org, and we'll also include the documents here for how to do it locally, and working with the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, the Pennsylvania Family Institute, how to lobby through social media. And before I hand it off to Eric, I just want to, we have found it to be a very effective tool. Most members are on Facebook, they're on Instagram, and that's great. And when you contact those places, you're usually talking to a staffer, and that's fine. When it comes to a lot of issues, the staffers are usually smarter than than the elected official. But on Twitter, what I found more and more is that members of Congress themselves run their Twitter accounts. And as I'm trying to lobby members of Congress to support a certain piece of bill or to sign on to a certain letter, I find contacting them directly through Twitter. And also what really helps too is what we try to explain to people. Take a photo of yourself at your local cheesesteak factory sorry about that, your local place where you can get a Philly cheesesteak, and to show that you are from the area, and they'll listen to you more, and it's amazing how effective it's been. Taking it more to a local level, because this is really what it's all about, is teaching how on the state level. I want to hand it off to great colleague Eric.
Thanks so much, Tom and Michael and Dr. Ryan, Abby, just amazing speakers to follow up. I just want to share one quick story personally, and it answers a question that I often get from friends of mine, actually, saying, how do you lobby this pro-life thing? You know you're going to lose every single time under this governor. You know, what keeps you going? And talking about children, I have one. He's 23 years old. God bless him. Alex came right on time. See, I was a planner. Everything was planned out in my life. He came right on time, give or take about 6 years. So he came 6 years earlier than I was expecting. I was a first-year law student. I had no money at all. And I remember throwing my arms up to God going, okay, this is not the plan we worked out, and I can't afford this. I don't know what you want me to do. And I remember calling my mother, and she said, first words out of her mouth, little Irish Catholic girl, did you pray to God? And I said, yes. And I told him, this isn't the plan we worked out. And she said, and I bet that gave him a really good laugh. You want to make God laugh, tell him what your plans are. But it was a money issue for me. Well, you know, I just threw my arms up and thought, you know what? If he wants the kid, if he thinks it's the time for me to have this kid, fine. I have never received a greater blessing than the birth and the life of my son. It's not that God is without a little bit of irony. Now, remember, I was concerned about Alex being born because there was no money for it. He was a monetary inconvenience. He is now working for JP Morgan. So it seems as though not only did God prove me wrong that I would be able to afford him, and I did, but then he just rubbed that salt in the wound a little bit more, because now my son, I just asked him, can I please have a small cottage on the estate, you know, as you continue to rise the ranks of JP. Now, how do we do this in Pennsylvania? Look, we all know Governor Wolf is going to veto anything that looks remotely connected to pro-life. That man is a tortured soul. Look, we're out saving babies, and we should. But I think us in the pro-life movement, and echoing what the other speakers have said, it's not just the babies we're trying to save. I'm worried about all the people that are voting against the babies, the governors that are vetoing the pro-life legislation. Those are the souls that are in moral jeopardy that we need to try to get a handle on. Look, we have a lot going on this legislative session. For those who don't realize, Pennsylvania has a 2-calendar-year legislative session. We're ending up this session in December. The governor's vetoed 2 major pro-life issues we put in front of him already. He's put a $3 million special line item in this budget, specifically stated to fund Planned Parenthood, $3 million. Now, here's the thing, and people said we always have to respond with love. Here's one of the things that can happen when you don't. There was a bill passed after the tragedy of the Tree of Life shooting. As you remember, that's the Jewish synagogue where the madmen went in and started opening fire. The legislature responded with a security grant act to try to get money into the hands of nonprofits. And everybody knew, you know, we have to get around the church and state issue, but everybody knew it was to protect synagogues, churches, cathedrals, mosques, anybody who is in danger of a terrorist attack. Well, there's a Planned Parenthood out in Pittsburgh that got one of the largest allocations of money from that. How did they do that? Because somebody got upset with them and posted on social media. They were driving out of West Virginia or Ohio, wherever it was, to come into Pittsburgh to start shooting people. It was that one person that lost their temper, probably in jail now, I don't know, but it ended up taking tens of thousands of dollars away from synagogues, mosques, churches, people that really needed it. So again, we need to love everybody in this fight. Some of the bills we put forward, the Down Syndrome Protection Act. This is one that I'm probably most proud of this veto more than anything else. Not that it vetoed it, but that we got the issue out there and everybody in Pennsylvania knows what it's about now. As a matter of fact, one of the pro-choice lobbyists that I work with on other issues too, but she's hardcore pro-life, came up to me after the veto and said, Eric, I got to tell you, good work on that one, because that one really did make me think. And I said, you know what? The Down Syndrome Protection Act was all about eugenics. It's not okay just to kill someone because they're disabled at any age. But we have other ones out there right now. Perinatal support. That simply says if a family receives that crushing news in the doctor's office that your child's gonna die before birth or shortly after birth, that we just give them information on local hospice options in the area. Again, the governor says he's gonna veto it. Fetal remains, fetal heartbeat, a bill that would require abortion centers to post their inspection reports and what they've done to remedy those. Planned Parenthood is against that, yet there's no nursing home or healthcare facility out there. There's not a restaurant out there that doesn't have that stuff posted publicly. Telemedicine, that was a terrible veto we just took in the middle of a pandemic. He vetoed telemedicine. Now let's make no bones about it. He vetoed it, and while we wanted it to pass, we were better off taking the veto than it going through without the pro-life language. That would have created a legal right to it in the future. That could not have happened. And we all know in pro-life circles and in pro-choice circles that the fastest growing way for abortion is teleabortions. They want to use the pills. I'm not talking about the morning after pill. That's one of them. But teleabortions are used with a 2-pill regimen that they give out. Those pills, those medications are so dangerous that the FDA has put them on a restricted list called the REMS list. It's on there with a bunch of other drugs. And they're so, the outcomes, what can go wrong is so deadly that the FDA says it can only be administered in a healthcare facility. Right? In this case, it's generally massive hemorrhaging. There have been untold number of deaths and hospitalizations over the use of these drugs. Planned Parenthood has come out and stated, it's on their website, you can read it, their plan moving into the future is to get that drug off the FDA REMS list. They're running 8 clinical trials right now that they've lobbied to get nationally. To remove it off the REMS list, they want to do a Skype interview with a woman, drop ship the pills to her door, and then do one follow-up. Now, what happens when the 16, 17, 18-year-old girl who's scared and hasn't told anybody up in the northern tier of Pennsylvania, and I love the northern tier of Pennsylvania. I love to go up there and hunt. I love to go up there and hunt because there's more deer than men in some sections. When that girl goes into the restroom at school and hemorrhages out on the floor and nobody knows why, and she doesn't have a healthcare facility within an hour and a half of her, what are we going to do then? And I told the head of Planned Parenthood, I've known her for years. She's the president of Planned Parenthood. She lobbies on them for free. I said, this is about safety. I mean, I understand you're pro-choice and you want to do abortions, but do you really want to do them in such a reckless, dangerous fashion? She said, yeah, but with one abortion doctor anywhere in the state with telemedicine and teleabortions, I can do hundreds of abortions a day. Little overhead, little costs. I can reach out to everybody. So that is really the battlefront, I think, moving forward in this. But there's some other, honestly, successes we've had. We were able to get the health insurance exchange bills that went through a little bit last year, actually, the first calendar year of this session. They would have gone through and they would have paid for abortions through health insurance exchanges in PA. We were able to get that quietly amended to get that out. This bringing everybody together with the March for Life and Pennsylvania Family Institute that we work on any number of issues with constantly. It's just such a great partnership. But we honestly can't do it We just can't do it with all of you who are on this, all the advocates on the ground. We really need your help. And I have found over and over again, and and I got some questions from some folks in the pro-life community over this, because they saw or they heard or whatever that I was talking to pro-choice legislators. And I do all the time. We've passed anti-human trafficking bills with the support of pro-choice legislators. We've passed some wonderful poverty initiatives with the help of pro-choice legislators. And you know what that's done? We've walked into those offices, and time again, I've heard, why are you here? You know I'm pro-choice. And I've said, because I'm not here to talk about pro-life legislation from the baby standpoint. I'm talking about it from a poverty standpoint, from a human trafficking standpoint, from a. These are legislators that we never talked to before, who now will cross the hall and come over and talk to us. But now, here's the funny thing, they're starting to talk to me on a personal level, not just a work level. And they're starting to say, look, man, off the record, tell me about this whole Down syndrome thing. What are you really trying to do with that? Look, man, the fetal remains thing, I know the rhetoric on both sides. What are you really getting at with this one? Right? And they're just talking to me like a friend. And how do you change hearts and minds, and how do you save souls until you first become their friend? Right? So let's continue to work at this together. Let's approach everything with love, because that's what we have to do. That's what my Savior told me to do. And just like it's with the birth of my son Alex, he loves when I bring him up on these calls all the time. Trust me. My son Alex, I don't know how it's going to work out in the end, but that's not up for me to decide. That's up for him to decide. He's in the driver's seat, and I have total faith in him that I just do what he tells me to do, and it'll all work out in the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you and Tom McCluskey as well for your valiant work in the halls of the Capitol in Harrisburg and in Washington, D.C. And it is our honor and pleasure to partner with you in that as well. And I'm overjoyed for this webinar to have hundreds of people across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania hear these stories. And we're going to go to now a time of questions and answers from our panelists. And I would encourage the panelists as well to feel free to cut in and converse with one another. I think we're all friends here. I know we are all friends here, and I've been encouraged by what I've heard here today as well. And for those of you in the audience who have questions, we've gotten some already that have been submitted in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can, and we'll talk about some issues and resources as well. We're going to be finding out from each of the panelists how you can get in touch with their organizations and find out more about the work that they're doing and how you can support them in prayer and financially as well. And as was encouraged to us throughout this webinar, to be supportive in prayer for the pregnancy care centers and financially for those groups and others, all of those that are engaged in the pro-life movement as well. So let me start with with our panelists. Start with you, Abby Johnson, because we're just so grateful that you took time to be with us here in Pennsylvania. As I mentioned, I should have remembered about your 8th child, because I saw you at 9 months pregnant there at a rally in Philadelphia after the Brian Sims video that came out of him accosting pro-life folks. And I later came to find out that the pro-life women and girls that he was accosting outside the abortion clinic there in Philadelphia had been recruited by Dr. Ruberu and engaged because of her wonderful work. So it all kind of comes together to see this. But Abby, I just wondered if you could reflect on that day. I don't know if you remember that rally out there, and talk about just what an encouragement it is when pro-lifers come together, as we hope will happen this fall at the March for Life in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that was sort of funny. I was actually in Canada. You're right. I was just about to pop. I was like two weeks from my due date, and with my 8th child, and I was so mad at that Brian Sims for bullying those girls, and I just took to Twitter at like, I don't know, midnight or something, and I said, hey, Brian Sims, how about I show up? at the Philly Planned Parenthood and you bully me. And then I woke up the next morning and Matt Walsh was like, hey, how about it? How about we show up at Philly Planned Parenthood and try to meet Brian Sims? And I was like, all right. So all of a sudden, like, we're showing up and doing it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can make a pit stop on my way from Canada. So my husband's like, I better be there in case you have our baby in Philadelphia. So, you know, it's just what you do, you know, but, it's, you know, I think that it's an important message to send. I think, I mean, me personally, I'm tired of being bullied by the pro-choice movement. I mean, look, I want to lead with love. I want to tell people that I love them, but I'm also not going to be bullied. And I think for a long time, I mean, even on the sidewalk, there was sort of this idea that we can just be pushed around, that we're not going to, you know, sort of stand our ground on the sidewalk. And there were, you know, I remember even here in Austin, you know, there would be people that would come and they would, you know, physically push around sidewalk counselors. And the sidewalk counselors would say, well, you know, I just want to turn the other cheek. And I'm like, you call the police. You know, we have every right to be out here. And so I think there was this idea that, that we are just to sort of be a doormat for the pro-choice movement. And that is not who we are. You know, yes, Jesus is merciful, but he is also just. We serve a just God. And so, you know, we are to stand up against injustice. And that's exactly what we are doing when we go and we stand up for the unborn. And we are to stand up for our own rights as well and our own person. And so when Brian Sims was doing this to these young women who are out there standing up for the unborn, you know, there were people that needed to stand around them and to say, hey, this is not okay. It's not okay that you're doing this to these young women. And, you know, the whole outcome of that was so pathetic. You know, they ended up getting a flippin' note card, like a fake apology note card from Brian Sims. There was no like in-person apology. That's what it was supposed to be, but it didn't end up being that. And there was really no accountability, you know, from Brian Sims. And it was really ridiculous. And that was allowed, you know, that was allowed to happen. And nobody held him accountable. And it was really sad. And nobody in the government held him accountable. And it was sad. But I mean, we have to stand up, especially these young girls going out there and standing up for the unborn. And we absolutely have a responsibility to stand behind them when they're getting bullied by a grown man, and especially someone who is an elected official. We absolutely have that responsibility.
Dr. Ruberu, just to follow up on that a little bit, because you've seen kind of, I guess, what might be described as fruit, as God was involved in that whole circumstance and situation, the rally that took place as well. Your comments related to, has that engendered more engagement by folks in the Philadelphia region? So God has a purpose even in these difficult things?
Absolutely. God always uses everything that happens, and no matter how dirty or horrible it is, he'll always twist it and make something beautiful out of it. And so I honestly felt like I should send Brian Sims flowers, because the fact that he showed up and he behaved in that despicable way, it ended up with people creating, actually the mother of those girls created a GoFundMe, and it raised so much money for the pro-life union, where we can now provide help to these single moms who have chosen life. And the number of people who showed up at that rally, several of them signed up to be sidewalk counselors and to help out with sidewalk servants. So we had a real boost in the number of people participating. So it was really, really beautiful.
Well,
and we never saw him again. So that was great.
Speaking of the effectiveness of the sidewalk counseling that goes on there in Philadelphia and around the country with 40 Days for Life, and Abby's life story tells that very clearly about the folks that were outside the fence there at the abortion clinic in Texas where she worked. I know, Doctor, that you're involved with a friend of the court brief that our attorneys at the Pennsylvania Family Institute are doing related to a law in the city of Pittsburgh that says that pro-life activists or pro-life sidewalk counselors have to be at least 15 feet away, I believe it is, from an abortion clinic entrance or anybody that would come in there, further away than you need to be to protect from COVID-19. And I just wondered your thoughts and maybe Abby and Ryan's thoughts related to laws like that are trying to restrict the ability to speak a pro-life message to women, girls, or the men and boys that oftentimes are pushing them into the clinics.
I think it's so important that as sidewalk counselors and people praying outside of the abortion center, that we have the ability to stand in the public right of way, and that we have the ability to reach out to these men and women, offer them resources, and to speak with them. And these issues are not things that we generally shout from across the street to someone, hey, you need to save your baby. But no, it's the moments that are intimate where we can just slowly be next to someone and say, hey, love, we're here for you and we have information for you. We don't want to have to shout at them in order to get that information across to them. We see in places like Canada where people are not allowed to be outside of the abortion centers, or they have this ridiculous buffer zone around these places where people can't access these women, and how that impacts their ability to be able to hand off these resources and encounter with these people. But in Philadelphia, especially, we're blessed at that 12th and Locust facility. We are literally right there with them. We can very quietly and very lovingly speak to these women. And when they go high, we go low. When they're shouting at us and yelling at us, the people who are escorting them in, we lower our voices and we whisper, and they automatically tune into, because it's so different from that aggressive shouting that these other people are doing. And they would not be able to hear that if we were across the street or 15 yards away or whatever it is. It's crazy.
So that Pittsburgh case is in the federal court system, and we're glad that you've partnered with us and the folks there in Philadelphia to stand up for the rights of the free speech rights of citizens in Pittsburgh and beyond. Ryan, I want to ask you about that because Dr. Ruberu talked about the ability to kind of whisper or talk to a woman. Pregnancy care centers obviously have that opportunity when a woman or girl who believes she might be pregnant is coming into a pregnancy care center. You have worked and advised pregnancy care centers, spoken at banquets and things. Your thoughts about that ministry and how effective pregnancy care centers, resource centers can be in fighting the pro-life fight? Oh, you're muted there.
How about that? I was just seeing if you could read my lips, that's all.
Okay.
But thank God for pregnancy centers. Thank God for the work that they do. They are on the front lines, which is why the abortion industry tries to shut them down in every way they can. Even this whole, suppression of free speech at pregnancies or outside of abortion mills. I mean, the Supreme Court keeps revisiting the same thing over and over again. 2014, they ruled against Massachusetts trying to have that 35-foot buffer. I mean, it's a free speech issue. I don't know why we have to keep revisiting this over and over again, but that's what the pro-abortion side tries to do. And in trying to silence pregnancy centers, look what they did in California. Tried to force pregnancy centers to promote abortion, the very opposite of what they were doing. It's like, I don't know, forcing gyms to promote fast food. I mean, it boggles the mind, the efforts that the pro-abortion side engages in to try to silence. But thank God for pregnancy centers. Thank God for the work that they do, that they come alongside these women. It's not just for the moment. Oftentimes it's up to 2 years after the baby is born. I mean, you'll walk into a pregnancy center, and I've walked into hundreds and hundreds of them, and you'll find baby and mama boutiques. You won't find that inside of a Planned Parenthood. I mean, parenting classes, I mean, life skills classes, post-abortion counseling, which is really critical because we love those who've made that decision as well. And so that's why the Radiance Foundation, we stand with pregnancy centers. And there's a lot that you can do, even with your local pregnancy center. You can go to optionline.org, you can go to pregnancy-decision-line.org and find out where your local pregnancy center is, but they need your help. Not only do they need your financial support, but they also need your time, your donations, the material donations. There are lots of ways that we can stand with our pregnancy centers who stand with parents facing unplanned pregnancies.
Eric Faley, I want to ask you a question. This is coming from the audience. The Trump administration made some inroads into cutting funding for Planned Parenthood, at which point the Wolf administration, then in their 2020 proposed budget, said, well, we'll make up that funding with state dollars, $3 million. And someone's wondering, what is the status of that? Has that happened yet? And if not, what can we do about it?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, they put $3 million, the Wolf administration put a line item in there, $3 million. When questioned about it by some of our pro-life legislative friends during budget hearings, Secretary of DHS came right out and said, yeah, it's for Planned Parenthood, and the purpose is to backfill what they lost from the Trump administration. Working with the Pennsylvania Family Institute in particular and others, we've talked to all of our good pro-life legislative support leadership in the House and the Senate, and they have assured us there is absolutely no way that line item will survive in the budget. And then we got hit with the pandemic. So now we're looking at, depending on who you talk to, 4 to 5, maybe up to a $6 billion deficit for the Pennsylvania budget right now. So that makes it even less likely that line item is actually going to ever see the light of day. They don't have it and they can't justify it.
So I want to mention a couple of things, and this relates to a question that any of the panelists can talk about. And there was a simple question here, which is, how can Pennsylvania citizens help close abortion clinics? And I first want to offer an answer myself. I'll be a panelist here for just a moment, which is that abortion clinics have been closing in Pennsylvania. And in many respects, that is a result of a law that was passed after the Kermit Gosnell abortion clinic scandal. The then Philadelphia DA, their grand jury report recommended that Pennsylvania tighten restrictions or regulations on abortion clinics to protect the health and safety of at least the women that come in there. We know that abortion clinics are never going to be safe for unborn children. And the passage of that law, thanks to the work of pro-life groups in Pennsylvania, pro-life legislators who were voted into office by folks like those listening into this call, passed legislation to require more stringent guidelines and health and safety guidelines on abortion clinics. Ultimately, we at the Pennsylvania Family Institute think that abortion should be ended, that all human life should be protected from conception till natural death. But as a result of that, those regulations going into effect, including unannounced inspections, et cetera, I think the number is up to 8 or 9 abortion clinics in Pennsylvania that have closed as a result. And that's one thing, is getting involved in the legislative efforts. A lot of pro-lifers kind of put on blinders, or, like horse races, horse, whatever, leave that analogy aside, and don't think about the holistic nature of this movement, to be engaged in the sidewalk council, engaged in prayer, engaged in donating, but also communicating with your elected officials about these things. I wonder if Tom and Eric, before we go to our other panelists, can just talk about what you hear from legislators, members of Congress, or the members of the Pennsylvania General Assembly, who might say to you, as I have heard, I'm not hearing a lot from pro-life citizens. I get barraged from Planned Parenthood. I get barraged from so-called pro-choice people. Pro-lifers seem to think everything's going to be okay or whatever. Tom, if you want to address that, is that the kind of thing you hear from some members of Congress?
Unfortunately, we do on the federal level. And it perplexes them, because you have upwards to 500,000 people showing up for the March for Life, except when there's a vote there was just a vote on Friday. Nancy Pelosi had a bill that all the things we're talking about were in that bill. Increased funding for Planned Parenthood, fetal tissue research, health insurance paying for abortions. and they were not hearing from people. And it was their, they not only need to hear from them in a place where the Democrats might control the House or pro-abortion forces control the House. But the best thing to do is, this sends a message to the other chamber as well. When we're loud, Abby was saying she doesn't like bullies, and I fully agree, unless we are the bullies. And if we are so loud that it scares the other side from working to do what's right. So in that circumstance, we do need to yell from the rooftops when we're trying to stop such legislation.
Yeah, I would echo that. Sadly, I hear the same thing in the Pennsylvania legislature all the time, especially from legislators down in the Southeast. Look, these legislators, there's the right thing to do. And we all know what the right thing to do is when it comes to pro-life legislation. I would never want to be a legislator. I would always vote pro-life, but they are confronted with some really tough choices. Now, for them, that means, especially if they're in a quote-unquote politically vulnerable district, 1 vote, 2 votes, and suddenly they've got a group like Planned Parenthood dumping millions of dollars into an opponent to throw them out of office the next year. And we can go, yeah, but you should take the vote. And they should. But understand, that means they lose their job and their funding, and they still have a spouse, and they've got all the pressures we have as well. So they really have to be loved into doing what is right, because they have so much temptation to take the easy way out and to do what is wrong. And there have been many pieces of legislation, and Michael and I have worked on it, where we've had good pro-life people come up to us and say, please don't make me take this vote. This is going to hurt me in the election. He's going to veto it anyways. Why are you putting me in this position? And the answer is simple, because it's the right thing to do, because we need to educate people about these issues. Because now everybody in Pennsylvania knows that the pro-choice fanatics think it's okay to kill somebody just because they might be disabled when they're born. Right? And before that, they didn't. Did it get vetoed? Yes. But it was a 3-year fight, very public, very in the press. Everybody in the halls of Harrisburg know it. So yeah, you know what? When somebody is elected into the Pennsylvania state legislature, Planned Parenthood will be in their office within 2 months. They have an amazing network for that. We need to be able to counter that. The best way to work with a legislator, call up your local legislator, ask for a district office meeting, and meet with him or her in the district, and just tell them why you love this movement. And then be vocal on other issues as well. Don't just be a one-issue pony. I mean, pro-life encompasses a lot. So get to know your local legislator personally.
Very good. Well, we're coming to the bottom of the hour here shortly, so I want to give each of our panelists, we're going to run around the horn to our keynote speakers, the opportunity to have any closing comments. We'll start with you, Abby.
Oh, well, I just want to encourage everybody to remain encouraged during this time. I want to encourage everyone to remain courageous and to stay bold, to be bold with your faith and with your pro-life beliefs, and to, stay really engaged with the legislative issues. We have a very important election coming up in November. We've got to get this right in November. There are too many unborn children on the line for us to mess it up. So, let's stay laser focused on the most important issue at hand, and that is the unborn, that is protecting them from abortion, and just stay encouraged.
And Abby, if people want to get in touch with your organization, what would they do? What's the website?
Yeah, so that is abortionworker.com, and my website is abbyjohnson.org.
Okay, very good. Doctor, if you have any closing comments, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, especially now with all the telemedicine that we're doing in Pennsylvania and the telemedicine laws that, or legislature that we've been trying to deal with. I think it's really important to remember, I mean, just the other day I encountered a woman who called us for abortion pill reversal. She took the abortion pill and she thought at the time that she was 11 weeks pregnant, but because obviously she had no ultrasound done, she had a abortion pill left over from a prior abortion pill thing that she was given. She miscarried too early after being given the pills. And so she had this at home. She decided to take the abortion pill. She decided to reverse it. She called us up. We started the reversal process. I got her in for an ultrasound the following day to find out that this woman was 19 weeks pregnant and she had taken an abortion pill. And this is something that can happen across the end to anybody because they're not checking an ultrasound to understand how far along these women are. There are so many women that I encounter in my office all the time that have irregular cycles and have no idea when their last period was, or they had their period and then they bled again, which was just a hemorrhage early in the pregnancy, which is what happened with this woman. And there's just so much possibility of harm to women through this. So definitely any
Folks, it looks like the internet has gone down, but we'll hopefully be able to get her contact information for everybody. Ryan, any closing thoughts?
You are going to call now from 8:15 to 8:30. The three of you are going to call and just continually fill these people's inboxes with information so that.
Whoops, we'll go to you, Ryan. I think her internet is stopping.
Okay. Well, you can find out more about our creative life-affirming work at radiance.life, www.radiance.life. During this time where we're locked down, a lot of us are locked down, you can still share content. So we have a lot of great stuff to share, whether they're videos, memes, fact sheets, and there are lots of other great pro-life organizations that have content to share. The other thing I want to encourage people to do is to stay informed, because you're not going to get this information from fake news media. But here are three great resources, in addition to radiance.life, that you can find out what's going on as far as news goes. Go to lifenews.com, go to LifeSite News, that's S-I-T-E, lifesitenews.com, and also liveactionnews.org. Those three sources are great ways to keep informed as to what's going on. As I mentioned, you're not gonna get this from mainstream media. You're not gonna get Fox News occasionally carries this, but you're gonna get the context and get the clarity so that you know how should I decide to address this issue? What should I engage in? What are the issues that I need to engage in? So I really encourage that. I'm also going to post it on the chat so you have those three links in addition to the Radiance Foundation. But honored to be here. Thank you, March for Life, for providing this forum. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and thank you to all our panelists for participating in this wonderful Log In for Life webcast brought to you by the Pennsylvania March for Life, which is a project of the March for Life organization along with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. A few housekeeping items to mention here at the end. As I said earlier, today is the deadline to register to vote in Pennsylvania for the June 2nd primary. Today, May 18th, is the deadline. If you have not registered to vote, and I encourage you then to do so, votespa.com, votespa.com to register to vote. Also, we at the Pennsylvania Family Institute and other pro-life groups as well have voters guides, which I encourage you to access. If you go to our website, pafamily.org, you can find a link to our website for the June primary. Also, we are releasing today at the Pennsylvania Family Institute a 2020 State of Abortion in Pennsylvania report, just released today. We want to best equip you with the specifics on what Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry is doing in Pennsylvania with the truth. So as you communicate with your friends and family and elected officials and others, letters to the editor, that you can have the facts as well. And finally, the plans for a Pennsylvania in-person March for Life are ongoing. We're hoping to be able to do something in the fall. We're working with all of the different parties involved to hopefully pull that off. We're writing schedules right now in pencil, as everybody is with this COVID-19. But stay tuned for that. And pamarchforlife.org is the website, or PA Family Institute, pafamily.org. You can find out more information on that, or as well as for the March for Life in Washington, D.C. Every January, you can get their information at marchforlife.org and get their information as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us, thank our panelists, thank all of the many hundreds across Pennsylvania, not only for logging into this, but for your pro-life work and prayers over decades and over these recent weeks. It's needed now more than ever. As Abby Johnson said, we are close to the finish line. Think of it as we're a football team on the 5-yard line about to score a touchdown. That's when the pressure becomes really tough, when the other side gets aggressive and wants to keep, we'll make it. And now if I'll turn it over to Eric Failing for our closing prayer, and we will say goodbye.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all to all the presenters on this, and most especially to everybody who joined us. I tried to get to as many questions and questions in the chat and Q&A as I could. If I didn't get to yours, I apologize if it was directed at me. You can get more information at pacatholic.org about our organization. We'll be putting out a voter's guide for the general election, which will simply show who voted pro-life. You know, it's a pro-life vote. Here are the bills. Do they vote yes or no? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward thing. So I invite you to all do that. Also, if you want to contact me at all, it's just efailing@pacatholic.org. I love to talk inside politics. I'm not allowed to do it in the home, so this pandemic has been a wonderful opportunity for me to do that. My wife has given me a brief reprieve, so I can do this now. But let's join together in prayer now as we separate virtually. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your guidance. We thank you for your love and for bringing us all together virtually in this time of pandemic, in this time of fear and strife that has gone around the world. We don't know the outcome. We don't know how to get through this, but we do trust in you, and we trust in your love for all of your children. Help us to also to love our brothers and sisters, whether they agree with us or not, on such critical issues as that of life. Please send us the words, the guidance, the actions to love them back into your fold the way that you want them to be. Please send your spirit down upon them, comfort them, heal their wounds that may be causing them to drift away from us, and bring them back in so that we can once again be one united family, sheltering in your love. As all things, we ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Eric. And finally, I'd just like to offer my thanks to Tom McCleskey and the team at the March for Life organization for partnering with us and for putting this webinar on as well. Tom, any closing words?
God bless you all, and we look forward to seeing you all in person at the first Pennsylvania March for Life.
Thank you. God bless everyone. We'll see you.